The word efficiency somehow needs to be fitted into the Lotus moniker. We always used innovation, and there was certainly plenty of that. While on one hand, we were very much encouraged to go and find out what other people were doing. I spent hours in Norwich garages underneath all sorts of cars because somebody had seen something we ought to go and have a look at. You know, it might be an anti-roll bar bracket or a door handle or whatever. But on the other hand, we didn't take anything for granted. So when people put huge hydraulic rams on the end of their cars to satisfy a bumper requirement, there must be a better way. Think about it. And that innovation always coming. And it came from the racing originally. It came from Chapman. Chapman innovated everything in his house, his garden, in his life. So that's very much part of Lotus, but efficiency. We designed cars with less people. We used less tooling money. I think we actually did a very thorough job, a lot more than the press would have you believe. They were actually more reliable than a lot of people. You know, it's terribly fashionable to say Lotuses aren't reliable. I remember at the time, people with Porsches were smarting under the fact that quite ordinary 924s or so broke down alarmingly often. And their spare part prices were at least twice ours. You know, somehow things get into niches which are not necessarily deserved. Sometimes because a particular journalist has had to spend the night on a snow-covered bloody moor in the north of Scotland because it's broken down, as soon as they all do, you know. So it's not very even-handed. And boy, oh boy, you've got to drive some of its contemporaries to realise how bloody awful they were.
Or some of the issues not harking back to when there were kit cars, and you know, maybe they weren't turned out very well.
That was always a problem with the kit car. Some people did it properly, had a professional put it together, had to get it back to the factory to have it checked, and some weren't. And some, you know, doing the nuts up right, and put them in the right way round, you name it.
Because if you've got a Lotus, and it's just been built very shoddily, it's still a Lotus, and then the next thing you get is a Lotus production car, they're still Lotuses. So splitting the two up,
most people,
it's very difficult.
Most people wouldn't know, yeah.
Because the number of times over the years when I've had the car, people said, "Oh, it's the kit car, isn't it?" No, it's not a kit car. It's, you know, it's a production car. Yeah, but you build it yourself.
But you hit on something that's so desperately important. People's first impressions, whether they're 2 years old, 11 years old, or whatever, but their first impression is the one that's stuck in there. And I say this is important because I remember many years later than the years we've been talking about, in the Artioli days, there was a nasty little plot by some of the senior management to go bankrupt for a weekend. I think the idea was to get rid of him. Somebody was going to appear like a guardian angel on a Monday morning, and everything was going to happen again. And I argued strongly against it. I said, people will never forget that we went bust. And luckily, it fell through. Nothing happened. But there would be people whose first words would be, "Oh yes, that company went bust, didn't it?"
Yeah.
Well, it did for 48 hours. It doesn't matter.
But the way people are, they always remember the negative part about it, not the positive
That's
part.
another aspect. Why aren't they remembering all the World Championships? I mean, that alone puts it on a different level to so many other people. But people's perception, so it goes back. Because the other thing that's fascinating now is there's a generation coming along that only know the Elise. Don't even know what an Esprit is. It's funny, I woke up this morning, I was thinking about an advertising. I thought of an advertising thing, really based on this problem of the 4 cylinders against the 8. And say people think 4 cylinders aren't enough for an Esprit, but 4 quite long cylinders seem to be enough for Concorde. So I've never been in the advertising business. But you know, when we won the BRDC GT Championship with the Esprit and Chamberlain Racing, oh, such a sad day. I went, paid my way in, etc. And Patrick Peel, who was PR, he went. Patrick had to go, I think even before the end, because he had an appointment. I stayed and personally bought the mechanics a beer. And the factory didn't give us stuff. And we'd beaten everybody. Ferrari, Porsche, Corvette, MG, you name it. To a national championship. Yeah, we should have been out there. So, you know, if you bought a Porsche, we beat you. If you bought a Ferrari, we beat you. If you bought an Aston Martin, we beat you. I've been through some very funny managements on Lotus since Chapman passed away. And the one that's coming tonight is the exception. About the only exception. When I left in 1998, I think, the then chief executive decided that Lotus didn't care about its past. It would sell its heritage collection, which wasn't a heritage collection. It was a bunch of cars for various reasons that hadn't been thrown away. The whole idea was initiated by Chapman, who had, of course, his racing car collection, but it was he that told Don McLaughlin, keep the last Europa, keep my Elan Plus 2. And yet, the chief exec at the time said, Lotus doesn't look backwards, it only looks forwards. And sold them all. And I see one of them, I think it was an Elan, came up an auction recently. And it got a gobsmacking amount of money. Which, not surprising given its provenance.
Was that when they changed the badge as well? Changed it away from the round badge?
Oh, the pudding, yes.
There's a lot of
pudding. The pudding. We call it the lozenge.
Yeah. It met with a lot of problems.
The Christmas pudding was initiated by
Wickens?
the British car auctions guy.
Wickens?
Wickens. He wanted a bit of his stamp on the whole thing. And I was busy with the M90, which had suddenly become an X100, so it wasn't the same. And it came to me and said, you're the designer chap, you know, we need a new badge. You just don't change it. Even, I mean, Ford have got the most horrible typeface. It might have been lovely in 1900, not a lot, but I think it's revolting. But given their due, they stick with it. Instantly recognised everywhere in the world. Lotus would not be in a position to market a change of logo like a really big company. So anyway, there was an open competition within the factory, and I refused to enter. Politically a bit iffy, but there you are. And I came up with the Christmas pudding. Well, I was such spoiled it, I didn't have the steam coming up the top. But of course, the bloody stupid thing is we should have all bought everything from beer mats to pens to radiator badges, because a few months later it had gone again.
Well, they put the Chapman logo back on it first, didn't they? Because the first one didn't have that on it at all.
Yeah.
So it was just the...
The LT wrap?
yes, yeah.
Hey, frankly, the Christmas pudding was enough to put me. I don't remember much about the rest of it.
It was pasta, which was green.
In fact, when it came back in the GM days, or a little bit after it came back, the styling department, even though they did in those days, actually redid the badge. They made a much better job of it. But the average guy, they never took the difference. They just cleaned out the spacing and the typefaces and so on, and did what you might call a professional job on an amateur work, which lives on to this day, and it's superb.
So
They actually increased the yellow as well.
So the one question that everyone asks, and there's been so many different answers, why the black badge? What was it for? Did it go on various different cars?
Well,
this is a story I'd love to hear.
Originally happened before I joined, reputedly in commemoration of Jimmy Clark.
Yeah.
But it only ran a short time as a sign of mourning, and then was put away. When we were doing the Elite, and we had the styling model in the workshop, I said to Chapman that I really didn't think this hideous bloody green and yellow thing, perhaps I didn't say hideous, this green and yellow thing kind of fitted the image of the upmarket car. And I think I actually said to him something like, would it be all right to use the black?
Okay.
Because we all knew that Jimmy's death was very, very sensitive. He said yes. So we used the black one on the upmarket front engine cars. Therefore, 73 onwards?
Okay.
Yeah, 73. Yes. Now, when it stopped again, I don't know.
The Esprit S1 and S2 had it.
Right, so it probably lasted until
Well, my turbo had it.
1980 approx.
I think there was a thing where a lot of people had black badges and stuck it on to say it was worth more because it had the black badge on it. And
My 83 turbo had one. My 83 turbo had one. Thank you.
Oliver, people are well aware that there were two white cars used in the movie. The one that's in the museum now, that Lotus sold. There was another one that had camera equipment mounted to it. Do you know what they did with that car? No.
No idea. Most films, because of the huge budget running every day, have backup. Well, Pretty Woman had a number of cars backup, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4, I think.
And after what she did to the transmission, I'm not surprised. That didn't do us any harm, though, did it?
And what's the story on that car is that it was parked outside the director's office for a day. What was his name again? Cubby...
Broccoli?
Broccoli, yeah. It was parked outside his office for a day and then... So that's a myth then, is it?
We had a PR guy called Don McLaughlin. Came from your part of the world. Edinburgh, actually. Don worked and worked and worked and worked to get the greatest quality. He also worked hard on royalty. The Duke of Edinburgh drove the front engine Lotuses more often than you realise. The cars delivered to Sandringham House for the weekend, that sort of thing. Because there is a story, I wasn't actually here when the royal visit took place, but the Duke of Edinburgh left Sandringham in his elite loan car with a couple of Norfolk's best road traffic guys with V8 Rovers or whatever to follow. Well, the story goes that he actually got to Hethel something like 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Now, okay, Sandringham's a 45-minute drive from here, or an hour. But the school kids in the street in Wyndham were still assembling when this thing whistled through. It was a bit naughty of him because a lot of people had lined up to see him and he'd gone. But the story was always that Don was trying to get Chapman a knighthood. As events turned out, of course, that was going to be highly unlikely. But Don worked like hell with those film people.
So how did they eventually get the car into the movie then?
I don't know.
Because I think, if I'm right, that was the last car that you didn't have to pay to get in.
Can't hear what I mean.
Sorry, I'm saying, as far as I recall, that was the last car that you didn't have to pay for to get into a Bond movie. Since then, because of the advertising.
Yeah, because it came from Lotus.
But I think since then, every car you had to pay.
The company wouldn't have had anything like enough money to do the sort of bribery race against BMW or something. But through some people working very hard, they managed to sell the positives enough to get round that sort of problem. The other thing is quite interesting because you're asking me about this film. Well, quite a lot of this was going on. I was there somewhere doing something. I was pretty busy doing something else. I might see Don McLaughlin and we'd have a chat and he'd say, "Oh yeah, I've just delivered a car to Cubby Broccoli or whatever. Roger Moore's coming to lunch. Yeah, great. I'm struggling with a windscreen wiper on a so-and-so, See you next week. Bye-bye."
So did anyone realise the impact of getting that car into the film at that particular time?
No, they probably didn't because it was about that time that the Bond films really took off.
Yeah.
And of course, the submarine bit was a bit adventurous, wasn't it?
Just not long after I got my Series 1, I had to replace the rear dampers on it. So my brother came and helped me for a day. We took it to the place where I worked, got it jacked up and got the dampers in. And the other thing we had to do was replace the rear engine mounts. And it was so difficult getting in with a spanner just to quarter turn at the time. And we spent most of the day getting these engine mounts out and getting new ones in. So we got back to the house that evening, knuckles bruised and tired and everything else. And as it turned out, the James Bond film was on the TV. And this thing went off the end of the jetty and then the wheels folded inside it. And I thought to myself, if you have any idea of how cramped it is inside that engine compartment, these wheels disappearing inside, it's not going to happen.
But it's also another thing that if you've been lucky enough to work on a lot of these projects in their infancy and you're building the first one, or in building a series of prototypes, you put it together in the right order. So if you're half lucky, there isn't something in the way when you come to get your spanner on it. And the whole thing is lovely and new. There isn't a speck of dust and dirt and mud or old oil or anything. And you poor buggers have to put up with a buck and bullets a bit later.
What was your favorite Lotus? What was your favorite Lotus?
Twin Cam Europa Special, I think. I always had a problem with the Elan, because it was a bit too small for me. The Europa was a perfect fit. I found the reclining seat position very, very comfortable. I mean, Mike and I drove the prototype to Turin and back. And that's a film in itself. As I said to him on the phone the other day, I said you were all right providing you had a pencil and a roll of tank tape, with which we managed to patch up the broken throttle linkage, the broken exhaust. Oh God! But we got it there and back. Fabulous car. I love that car. One of the things that colours your opinion, of course, is I drove them a lot, whereas Esprit, I didn't actually drive an Esprit until sometime in the 80s, and not much even then, not really until the end of the 80s. It's just circumstance.
I talked to Brian Angus quite a lot. He's looking after my car at the moment, and he tells me about what he's doing, and he might have to take a car up north for a test drive or do different things with it. And I think what a fantastic job to do these things every day. It's the kind of thing I would look on as a hobby, and Brian's doing that as his job, getting involved in all these things. And he's a lucky guy, but then so many people who are doing these kind of jobs. Must be a fantastic thing coming into work, and work is like your hobby every day.
Yeah. Now, it'd be very easy to get the comment wrong with its inference, but it's your job. You've got to do it. You've got to do it whether it's convenient to you or not.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that nearly all the time we were doing jobs, like Chris Bryan, doing jobs we enjoyed. And other people in this world have got jobs they don't enjoy so much. But having been an apprentice in a car factory in Coventry, I know what a non-enjoyable job's all about, where you start work at 8:30 and by 7:30 and by quarter to 8 your mind's gone dead. And the thought of doing it for 40 years would just blitz you. But then again, each to his own, isn't it? Some people probably don't mind that. They probably welcome the fact they're going to make a single decision about anything except what to eat for lunch. And let's hope the canteen menu's short,
I'm sure many people just get used to the fact they're doing these jobs, and they're enjoying it every day. But for a lot of us, it's when we've finished our daily job, it's getting home and doing the bit, driving the car, doing the bit that you guys have been doing or having the option to do during the day. So our fun time, to a certain extent, feels like your day job, and it's just...
Well, I'm not quite sure if this fits in to quite the angle I want, but some years ago, I joined the local milk marketing board 4th team for lawn bowling.
Yeah.
Because they were short, really. I hadn't a clue what I was doing. But they usually played at a pub in the evening in the summer, and it was quite nice, pleasant people. Except that I was on a project based in Germany most of the time. And I was constantly calling them up. I'm at the airport, I'm catching the 4:30 flight, I'm going to be in Germany a couple of days, very sorry, can't play tonight. Until in the end I resigned. I was just, out of 12 matches, I played 3 or something. So there you are on one side of the coin, aren't you lucky, you know, playing with cars. On the other hand, you could say, you poor old bugger, you never got to play bowls properly then. I remember talking to my daughter, and she must have been about 12, 13, lying on my bed in Japan, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was British Grand Prix was on at Brands Hatch. And she relayed progress for a period of time. I suddenly realised that international phone calls then was on £25 a minute or something. And we were going to go out of budget in a big way, and we had to call off. But that meant I wasn't there for her birthday, nor was I able to go to the British Grand Prix. There were people that actually had interests outside cars. There were a whole lot of people that didn't.
I serviced cars full-time for a short time. And I've been doing it part-time for a long time. And I also worked full-time fabricating chassis parts for race cars. And I never get tired of the work, but the reason that I don't open up a full-time business on that is we have to deal with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, taxes, accounting, and all this other stuff that goes along with it. I worked as a technician in a Porsche shop, and the guy who ran the place, you know, for Porsche, there's for every model, there's every possible job you could do on every model, it's already scripted out how long it's going to take, the entire procedure, and in, you know, tenths of an hour. And, you know, it never goes as quickly as, well, sometimes it goes much faster than the book says, but other times it doesn't. And we had to hit a target of 80% efficiency, which was if the factory said it takes 10 hours to do this job, we have to do it in 12 hours, all said and done. And that was our target to hit, and our performance was judged on that. And what you end up doing is taking shortcuts to hit the efficiency targets. For example, on a 928 or 944, the belt-driven accessories, there's a radius rod with, you know, rose joints on the end to adjust the length of the, you know, to tighten the belt with. And instead of cracking the nuts loose and twisting the rod, you unbolt it from one side, pop it off, get the belt off, put the belt back on, pry it with a crowbar. You know, you completely bypass the whole function of why they built these things in. And you know, you develop a shortcut for every single thing. But at the end of the day, I was still working for somebody else and following that person's orders. and I wasn't getting to be on the decision making and business running side of it. And at the end of the day, I was just going there, getting dirty, wrenching on a bunch of cars, and going home. And I didn't enjoy it that much. Now, I partnered with a friend of mine who owns a shop that his bread and butter was old Mercedes and Jaguars. But anytime he would get a Porsche or a British car or a Lotus or needed interior work done, he would call me down and I would work there. And that was a lot more fun. We would have these marathons. It was a small shop. And we would have these marathons where we would get up at about, I would stay at his apartment. I'd just sleep on the couch because he's in Cincinnati. He's a couple hours from me. We'd get up at 10 in the morning, grab some fast food and a bunch of iced teas and lemonades, and get to work. And we would just work nonstop until 5 in the morning. You know, we completely disassemble a TR7, put in a new dashboard, new dash pad, windshield, interior, blah, 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 and have the whole thing back together. We have it 80% back together, by 5 a.m. and we at some point you just pass out. The sun's coming up. You're tired. Go to sleep. Get up at 10 a.m. Repeat the process, and that was a lot more fun. And I would love to do that. But we got to work on our own time, and we got to, if there was something that we felt needed more time dedicated to it, then we took the time to do it. At the end of the day, we were getting paid for the job, whatever we got paid, and obviously the faster we did it, the sooner we could move on to something else. But, we got the satisfaction out of doing it right. We got that hobby-like satisfaction, but also got paid for it. But
you were doing the job almost like under your control. You were doing what you wanted to do rather than what that manual said you had to do.
Yeah.
And if you saw something that you wanted to do a different way, you did it a different way.
Yeah, well also, it took the amount of time that we needed to get it done, and we didn't have somebody, we didn't have anyone breathing down our necks telling us, looking at our times that we took and comparing to a book and giving us information. We didn't care about that. If a job, we knew what kind of work was involved in everything, and we gave people a quote, and we did the job and got the money, and that was it. So, but I think, everything becomes work when you have to do it. And I think as long as you have the some element of control over it, it's a lot more fun. Because when I was working at the Porsche shop, I could just as well have been working on Buicks. Aside Porsches are more fun to work on, but it's, I didn't get as a technician, I didn't often get the satisfaction of seeing the happy customer, of collecting the money myself, and you just worked on something and off it went, and you went to the next one, and it wasn't the same as if you got the whole cycle of the transaction. So,
it's interesting talking about this business of what you're lucky doing, all these exciting things, driving hither and thither, whatever. A lot of the things we had to do, we didn't really want to do. We wanted to do them differently. Mm-hmm. Either we were forced to do it the way we did because cash constraints, sometimes it was time constraints, sometimes it was policy that we would have perhaps, without the policy, might have done differently. It doesn't want to be seen as utopia,
No.
You know, you sat down, you did this wonderful GT car, as it were, you know, whichever part you did of it. But a lot of it would have been, well, I wish we could have done the body in aluminium or whatever. I'm not saying that's what we wanted to do, but, you know, we were having to do what we had to do with what we got at the time. And there were things we probably would have done differently if there'd been more time, money, bigger team, and so on. I go back to the Elite because I was more deeply involved in it. The other day I tried to write down the innovations, and I decided to use the alphabet. When I got to about Z, I thought I'd probably done enough. There were so many things on that car that were firsts. You know, a bonded aluminium radiator, it was a first. The tyres, they were a first of that type of construction. It wasn't the very first single windscreen wiper, it was the second, but we'd done it before the first one was known about. The rear wiper lifted itself up and parked itself off the glass so you could open the tailgate. Because in those days we had no idea of putting a hole through the glass or putting the whole thing on the glass. It would have been too heavy. All the way around the car, all the way around it, there were firsts and innovations and done different and worked. But a few of them didn't work as well as they could have done because we just ran out of resource, and that's people, time and money. And if a big company, say GM, had been given the basic drawings of that car and told to get on and do it, they've had to put about 1 million people on it. But I had 2 guys in body, besides myself, actually on the design part. Colin had 2 or 3 on the interior when that came along. The engine team, when I got there, was 4. Brand new engine, not only a brand new engine, but it's all got to be, all the jigs and fixtures and assembly got to be sorted out as well, and the machine tools. 4 people. And over in team, Maurice Philippe, dear man, lovely boy, had just a couple of draftsmen. And don't forget, in those days it was, now he'd done the Formula 1 car, what about Formula 2, etc.
You're speaking about, you know, if GM had done this and they would have a team of people to do it. Would that not, if it was GM, would that not dilute the whole thing and you would get...
Unfortunately it would, because I worked at GM stateside, which means over in America for the other people. I met a guy, I wish I could remember his name because he had a lovely name, very Central European one, but it was the sort of name you'd make up.
Krncevic?
And he was the armrest specialist, the door armrest specialist.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Yeah. Oh yes. He'd been doing armrests for over 25 years. When I went to see him on the project I was running, about, believe it or not, the armrest, because he didn't know anything else. And he advised me strongly to do it exactly the same way as all the others have been done for the last 25 years. Which is, of course, what happens if you get stuck up a creek like that. But I don't suppose he was the sort of guy who'd go to the vice president of armrests or whatever and say he needed $1 million research budget to see if there was another way of doing an armrest. By necessity, those companies are going to kind of have to have those people. The necessity is that I don't know how many models in the 60s, 70s, 80s GM were making in the United States, but even taking the frills off them, in other words, you know, the sport model or the whatever, it must have been over 100 going across their nameplates. Now, they'd all got to be engineered, designed and supported. the sheer number of human beings needed to do that would start to get a bit beyond the brilliant ones. You'd have to have some just ordinary competent guys. PhD in arm rest. So that, I think, is what it... The second thing is the corporation will be sued off the face of the earth if any of those innovations backfired. And there'll be some classic cases, like the Pinto fuel tank problem and so on, where somebody got a decision wrong and nearly wiped the company out. My own views about some of this is that, you know, there will be an element of risk when you climb into something that moves at speed. Whether it's an aeroplane, a ship, or a car, or a train.
Yeah, orange juice and lemonade, yeah.
And they are terribly complicated things.
Yeah, all of them. So.
And you're asking us to go faster for less fuel, less emissions, go safer, etc. So we can't build what was built in the 1920s. We have to keep developing, using new materials, using new ideas. Just occasionally one of those will go wrong. And then the customer gets down that courtroom and God help you. Puts you out of business. I wonder if that is entirely fair. If a mistake is made, it is often through ignorance. But I'm sure that a GM-type company looking at a Lotus would start to say, "No, we can't go with that because this could happen. 1 in a million chance. This could happen 1 in a million chance." And I came across this a bit in the safety work because you're working with these big companies. I guess I had to sell them a bit of the Lotus way. I said, "Well, no, we don't bother with that bit. We do it the Lotus way." Otherwise, we would have been in over our heads. I mean, the Delphi inland people couldn't believe. I went over there in charge of the project so that after the test, we'd sit down, discuss it, and I'd say, "Right, this is what we're going to do next." Originally, these guys were saying, "Well, haven't you got to call somebody?" No. But, you know, haven't you got to go away for a 3-week meeting and then not come to a decision? No. That's what we're going to do. We'll do it this afternoon. And actually, after a few weeks, they got the same thing. And I was going in the morning and they were all ready for the next test. None of this sort of, we thought we'd better wait in case you change your mind or anything like that.
But what that all comes down to is passion, isn't it? It's about the passion to get it right.
And we were so lucky that Lotus USA, just at that time, got some really nice posters made. And the test plates were all Corvette posters everywhere. By the time we finished, they were all Lotus posters. And we had a car sent out from Atlanta. So they all had a ride in an Esprit. And you went downtown and you turned south onto the 75 towards Cincinnati. And it's quite a nice, you know, flyover bend thing.
Yep.
With a 30 mile an hour limit on it. And we could hit the freeway at 90. Because they just couldn't believe it. You know, nobody, this is a car? They really got on board. They really were great supporters. In a way, you know, GM lost a big opportunity there because they perhaps could have pushed this in more parts of the GM empire and raised the game. I mean, the Corvette guys are a bit more like Lotus. And they certainly were kept as a separate group. And of course they keep the plant separate at Bowling Green.
So how do people like Corvette, when they come alongside Lotus and you compare the two cars, how do they cope with something that goes round corners the way it's meant to go round corners where, excuse me from getting this wrong guys, but you know, you've got a massive engine which is great in a straight line, but when it comes to a corner, then, you know.
Because they've never discovered you can go around a corner faster.
So when they see something like an Esprit coming online, they produce their car, which is a sports car, and then they see this other car with an engine half the size, which does everything faster, better.
Yeah. I mean, these days there's some very, very good cars coming out of mass producers' showrooms, no question. But you drive down the road here in an ordinary car, and you'll come to a bend, and you will automatically take that bend at an optimum speed for that car. Let's say it's 40 miles an hour. If you were driving a Lotus for the first time and no one told you that it did anything special, you'd go around that bend at 41. Get sports cars, so it'll be a bit faster, but that's it. Then you've had your track day and discovered its limits and go round it at 92. Never go back to the other one, obviously. But well, actually, Corvettes weren't that bad. The problem with the Corvette at those days, when I was there, was that they were far too stiffly sprung. So they jumped from peak to peak. And if the next peak was a long way away, they jumped a bloody long way. But I followed one down the 75 in Detroit. And it was daylight under the back tyres every time they went over a tarmac joint, a concrete joint. Because one of the Chapman things was, you keep the wheels on the ground. You get no braking, no steering and no acceleration if the wheel isn't touching the ground. Sounds stupid, doesn't
Simple.
it? But about 40 years after he said that, there was a guy designing a car who spent half his time off the ground. They had developed the handling of that particular Corvette on the Black Lake, as it's called, at Milford Proving Ground, which is a huge, very, very flat circle. And they got themselves a target, a G-force target, really high. I mean, you know, for a production car, I forget what it was, 0.8, 0.9 G or something, cornering. The problem is that nowhere else in the world is the road as smooth. So somebody went for a target, but isn't that failing to understand your product completely? It'd be far better if it went round the corner at 0.4 G, but it didn't matter what the corner was, it would go around at 0.4 G instead of only one in the world. But it's interesting, really, that most of the principles apply right across the board. They apply to a shopping car, they apply to a limousine. Now, you don't want to take a limousine round a corner at 0.8 G because Madame will fall out of the window and spill the shampoo. But if it was capable of doing it, what a safety aid when all is lost. Well, the shampoo's lost and she's half out the window, but still on the road. Is it night time?
I was thinking about that. Either that or it's Good Friday.
Yeah, I was saying this morning, Scotland's closed, isn't it?
Yeah, man,
Scotland's never
point the
closed.
camera at
No,
those
my wife
reeds
said
blowing in the
on the
wind for a
radio this
moment.
morning
Yeah?
that the storms are so bad they've told everybody to stay at home.
No, it's not too bad. No?
Except you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to come down here or whatever.
It was a huge gust before.
No, I mean, it's a red alert.
Well, it's there's a bit of wind and a bit of rain, but
Ah,
for Scottish people, it's just a day out.
I'll tell you what, I'll be strong enough to lift your sporran on a day like this. Talking of which, I'm going to go and lift my sporran out there.
Okay.
You might see me through the window if I venture that far.